Alright, so this is the assignment that would have normally been due yesterday, but because of the delay, I pushed it back to this morning. Okay? And then we'll talk about the assignment that I assigned yesterday that was due today. Okay? You guys did pretty well on this assignment. Just these two questions, number 9 and I think number 18, we struggle with just because of notation stuff. And it's very important that we go over these because for the rest of the year, we're going to encounter things like this. We want to make sure that we don't make assumptions about things and get ourselves in a little bit of a predicament because of the way we're viewing things and assuming things. Okay. So I want to look at this. I'm going to zoom in on the picture, but it asks you to make conclusions about angle JKH and angle LKH and see if they are congruent. Okay. Just based off of what we know so far. Okay? So I'm going to highlight JKH. I'm going to find that angle. So JKH is going to be the angle right there. You guys agree with that? Okay? And then LKH is going to be that angle. Okay? Now, based off of what we know so far, is there anything that can make a conclusion, that we can make a conclusion that those two angles are congruent?
It's an isosceles triangle.
But what we've learned so far.
There's the two lines. No.
Well, those two, but that doesn't tell us anything about the angles, right? So we've got these two lines congruent, but there is nothing written in that angle and nothing written in that angle there, correct?
I do not believe it is true.
Alright, so put that there, Tyler.
I can explain my reasoning.
We don't want to say that we don't know that they're congruent. Okay? They may in fact be congruent. Okay? And going off the isosceles idea, when we get to that stage in chapter 4, we will learn that those two angles are congruent. But based off the notation, nothing up there tells us that those two angles are congruent. Does that make sense? Okay. The notation tells us that angle L, so if I clear this off and I go to angle L and angle J, those two angles, are they congruent? Yeah, because the notation tells us that, right? For the same reason, if we look at that segment there and that segment there, are they congruent? Because the notation tells us that. Okay. Now, if I look at like LK and compare that to KJ, those two segments, they look the same, don't they? They look like they could both be the same measurement. But is there any markings in there, any notation that tells us that? No. Okay. Now, going back and saying eventually, yes, that's an isosceles triangle. Okay. Then eventually, yes, that angle will be congruent to that angle. And yes, LK will be congruent to KJ. But we haven't discussed that stuff yet. And what we want to do right now is take this course as if we know really nothing about geometry yet. Okay? And we can only say things in regards to right now, the diagram and the information that's in the diagram. So we can't make those conjectures yet. So we want to say no. If you answer this and said that yes, we can say they're congruent from the diagram, you are right, but you're using some information we haven't talked about yet. Okay? So I want to make sure that we understand that. Same thing happens in number 18. It says name all the angles in the diagram that are adjacent to and congruent to angle BDG. Okay, so BDG, I just want to highlight that angle. B to D to G would be that angle right there. You guys agree with that? Okay. So we're going to find the angles that are congruent to it. So if they're congruent to it, it's going to have what kind of marking in it? It's going to have, it's going to have a little red arc in it, right? Okay, or that red hash mark. Okay. Now, generally speaking, we want to go through and just start listing those things, but they kind of narrow the selection down for us over here on the right, correct? So I'm just going to go look and find HDE. Okay, HDE. Is that angle right there. Okay? Are they adjacent? Say again? No, they're not adjacent. Okay. And by notation, they're not congruent either. Okay. We will learn that they are congruent eventually, but right now, they are not. Okay. So I'm not going to mark A. B is HDF. So HD variable would be that angle there. Okay. Are those adjacent?
No.
No. Okay. So I'm not going to mark that one. We'll go BDC. B to D. Okay, BDC. Are those two adjacent and congruent?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So BDC. GDF. GDF would be that green one. Okay. Is that green one adjacent and congruent? No. Okay. So I don't mark that one. And then GFD would be that green one. Okay. And that's not adjacent to the blue one, right? Okay. So we don't mark that one. So right here for me, I only mark C. Okay. Now a lot of people would have marked GDF. Okay. So we marked BDC because it was congruent and adjacent, right? A lot of people will mark this one because it satisfies the idea of adjacent, correct? But they use the word and, okay? So it has to have both pieces of criteria. It doesn't say mark all of them that are adjacent and then mark all of them that are congruent, okay? Does that make sense, everybody? It wants both pieces of criteria to be true before you can say, yes, this angle fits that, okay? If they wanted you to mark the ones that are congruent along with the ones that are adjacent, okay? So it gets a check mark if it's congruent, and it gets a check mark if it's adjacent. Either one of those things, okay? They would have said, name all of the angles in the diagram that are adjacent or congruent to angle BDG. Does that make sense? Okay? So another thing in this class, another aspect of it, and in all math classes, okay, the word and the word or, okay, change the entire meaning, entire way we view the question. And means you have to have both pieces of criteria. If it said or, you go through, mark all the ones that are adjacent, and then go through again, mark all the ones that are congruent. Okay? If it says and, you need both pieces. Is that doable? Okay. So that's 1.5. Did you guys have any like individual personal questions you want to talk about for 1.5? We did relatively well. I think those two questions, we had 5 or 6 people missing both those.